Okay.
Welcome to the Understand Your Cycle podcast, where we turn taboos into table topics. My name is Tara, and today I'm joined by Sophie Milner. Sophie is a fashion, lifestyle, and travel content creator and also founder of the New Circle Society. It's a community where women can make new friends and attend fun events that Sophie organizes, be that F1 watch parties, puppy yoga, or pottery, you name it. She's got it all. Welcome, Sophie. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited today. I think that what you're doing is amazing, and I'm just really excited to be here.
Thank you. We are going to be talking mostly about PMDD today. And before we launch straight into it, I'm going to ask you, Sophie, if there is a period-related story that you may or may not have told anyone else that you can tell us today.
Um, yeah, it's actually, I mean, it's not funny. It's not like particularly interesting. It's kind of, it makes me quite angry thinking about it. Like I have like a lot of emotion when it comes to topics like hormones and periods and how other people deal with things and stuff like that. And I have always been someone, and you know what, I get it. When it comes to things like period sex, I know not every man is into it. Not every partner is going to be into it, and that's fine. But with one of my partners, one of the most frustrating and disappointing and quite shameful things that happened was, you know, when guys like make it out, like they almost like they want you to like them so much that they're willing to really change what they really feel comfortable with to make you happy or to appear like the good guy. So
Mm.
one of my partners was very much so like, you know, early days dating. He's coming back to mine, and I was like, I'm on oh, like we were like we'd been like quite like kissing quite a lot, very touchy feely on the date. And I was like, oh, by the way, like I'm on my period tonight. And then he was like, there was a pause, and he was like, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, are you like cool with period sex? And he said like, yeah, of course, like, you know, that's fine. And then when it came to it, it kind of did feel a little bit like this was a bit of like new territory for him. And then but
Oh.
then it became very like, it kind of became quite normal in our relationship, like that is what we would do. And it was only until like several months in that I was on my period and I was really horny and I was like kind of initiating things. And he was sort of like not really going for it. And I was like, oh, like, and I brought it up to him a few days later, being like, was everything okay? And then he was like, I actually, you know, I'm just not really sure that I'm into period sex. Like, I just don't like the way it smells. Like, I don't like how messy it is. Like, it just makes me really uncomfortable. And it was the fact that I felt so stupid because I was just like, I just wish that you, I guess I guess he had tried it to see if he was okay with it. And then probably wasn't. But the way it kind of happened and the way he like said it made me feel so dirty and disgusting and like
Mm.
like shameful and also embarrassed of like all the times where we had had sex when I was on my period. And I was like, oh, that was really good for me, and like I really enjoyed that. And then it just made me feel like really conscious of like my body and like everything like that. And it really made me quite insecure about my periods going on from that. And I think it was probably maybe how he dealt with it. And I appreciate the fact that he tried something he wasn't particularly comfortable with, but I would rather him have just been straight up and been like, it's not really for me. And then we could have
Mm.
just moved on with it from that. And he was very immature in the way that he approached periods. Like I'd be like, oh yeah, like my period's coming in. He'd be like, oh, shall I get my suit and tie? It's on its way. And like, you know, and it's like I just want someone to be a bit more
Ugh.
mature. It's like I just
Yeah.
want someone who can like meet me at a level where they can talk about my like it's something that happens to me every month. It's something that impacts me a lot. Like, can we just talk about it like adults instead of like we're in school, you know? So yeah, I just found the whole thing very, very, very frustrating. So yeah, it's not the most fun period story at all.
Oh, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because like I used to be all like, oh, if men don't like period sex, that's really dumb and they should just get on board with it and whatever. And then I managed to relate it to something of mine as well, right? So I absolutely detest male ejaculation. I fucking hate cum. I hate the smell of it. I hate the feel of it. I hate it, right? And it's fine like on my tummy or whatever. Like I can deal with that anywhere near my mouth or my face and I will gag. I will throw the fuck
Nah.
up, right?
Oh
And
no.
so then when I have a partner who's just like, oh, I actually don't really like period sex, I'm like, you know what? Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
You're not coming anywhere near my
this
face, and we can not have sex when I'm on my period.
yeah,
That's absolutely fine.
exactly.
But be
Exactly. And I
mature
think that's
about
the
it.
thing. Be mature about it and also like just communicate in like a really nice, compassionate way. And also don't, if you're not
Yeah.
into it, don't say that like you're fine with it and you're like totally down with it, and then turn around and be like, actually, I think it's disgusting. And you're like,
Yeah, no, that's not cool. That's
oh,
not cool
oh,
at all.
yeah. Like, okay. I mean, he didn't say it's disgusting, but he was like, the things that he said, they were within that framing. So yeah, I was like, okay, like it's just be honest. Like I don't judge. I'm the same as you. I think I used to be a bit like, oh God, guys need to get over it. But now I'm just like, nah, not everyone's into everything, and like, you know what, let them be. It's more like we said, it's how they approach it. You can be like, oh, it's just not really for me. And that, but instead of making someone feel shitty about it, and
Yeah.
like, because I feel like like very like mostly like very misogynistic guys, or like little teenage boys who are just like, oh my God, periods are so gross and disgusting. Like very much so like that. It kind of
Mm,
like it stinks of that energy, realistically. Like I don't
yeah.
like when people have anything around that energy of it all. But yeah, like people are entitled to their opinions. It's just be respectful about it.
Yeah. Don't be a dick about it. Like, how fucking hard is
Don't
it,
be a
right?
dick.
Oh, okay. Well, moving on to PMDD, which I assume is a topic that if you talk to boys about as well, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
So PMDD, I'm gonna just quickly, for anybody that doesn't know, share what it is. It is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and it is a very, very severe PMS, essentially. And from some stats they did at Oxford, it is estimated that around 1.6% of women and girls who people who have periods have PMDD. So that is actually, it doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a lot of people. Um, yeah, so I wanted to start by asking you how you figured out you had PMDD.
So I first of all, I'd been on antidepressants for a few years, for 3 years, and I came off them at the end of January in 2022. And I was fine coming off them, and everything was good. I was in a very good like mental headspace. And then it started to get towards like winter. I recently got into a new relationship, and I noticed that like we had a couple of really bad arguments, and a lot of them stemmed from me being very emotional and very like almost like inconsolable about certain topics. Like, and it was really weird. Like, I would like wake up, I'd be fine. And then one day I'd wake up and it was almost like a light switch had like switched off in my head and all the lights were out and I was in a totally new body with a different brain. And it was just like I completely wasn't myself. And it was a really weird experience. And I would feel so deeply insecure about like myself and my work. And I would be like, I just felt really down and all this stuff. And it kind of usually ended up being a situation of like me maybe taking a comment a little bit too personally, or maybe someone saying something to me online that would upset me more than it usually would, or me, or like my partner, like being blunt with me over messages, and I think that he's like ignoring me or doesn't want to talk to me and things like that. And it made me very sensitive, and I'm quite a communicative person when it comes to my emotions. So I'd be like, oh, is everything okay? Like, what's going on? Like, I feel like you're being dismissive, blah blah blah. And then it would somehow develop into an argument, and whereas usually I'd be like probably level-headed enough to be like, he's just busy at work, it's fine, like it's like, there's nothing wrong with him, there's nothing wrong with you, you're fine. I was like very not okay. And then I also like I just felt like I was getting really bad waves of body dysmorphia coming back, like my felt like everything. And basically like this happened, and then there'd be a complete meltdown, and it would last for like maybe like 10 days or so, and then I'd be like fine, and then I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm okay, like everything's fine and whatever. Like that was just a bad phase, or I was having a bad day, really bad day. And it would really freak me out every time I would feel this way, because having suffered from depression before, I'd be like, oh my God, my depression is coming back. And it would really freak me out. And then I'd be fine. And then it would come back. And it was only maybe after 3 months of it coming back. And I kind of like looked, I've been tracking my cycle for a while. And I looked at my cycle and was like, hang on a minute, like this kind of happens every single month around about the same time. But I was like, but this isn't PMS, because like you only get PMS 5 days before your period. So it's not PMS, because this is happening like kind of in the middle of my cycle, like in the
Mm,
latter, like in like the the last half of my cycle.
Mm.
So I was like, it's happening too soon for it to be PMS. And I was like researching it after having like some really severe, like awful breakdowns and being in a very, very, very dark place in my head. And like really like I find it really hard to talk about it because it takes me like back to a really like difficult time. And I remember reading about PMDD, and it wasn't the first time I'd heard about it. I had heard about it before, but I sort of brushed it off, as most women do, brush these things off. And I remember sending the article link to like my mum and my dad, who'd been very concerned about me, very concerned. And they were like, this is this, my dad especially was like, this is you. This is Sophie. This happens once a month. This happens like for like several days, once a month, and then she's fine. And this is a big thing. And even like it was interesting speaking to my parents about it because they were like, you know what, when you were in your teenage years and you were living at home, you actually were a fucking nightmare when you were during your period. Like you really were, like you really went into a bad place. And like, so it's something that I probably have had for a long time. And I remember after going on my antidepressants, my GP, I had to go for a checkup after 6 months. And I was like, oh my God, my life's amazing. These have saved me. I'm so good. And my GP was actually like really grilling me a little bit, being like, when did you feel like you had low moods? And he was like, did you feel like it'd be all of the month or just some of the month? And I'd be like, usually I'd be like pretty low generally, but then like during like in the lead up to my period, I'd be like really bad, like really, really, really super suicidal instead of just maybe a little bit suicidal. And like I don't mean to use those terms lightly. It's just a way of sort of kind of making peace
Yeah.
with how fucking depressed I was back then. And he was like, he's like, this does actually sound like it could be more like PMDD instead of actual like just baseline depression. But like if the antidepressants are working for you, then that's great and that's all that's important. And then I just kind of brushed it off because I was like, eh,
Mm.
like my life's great now. And then it only twigged in me like after I'd come off my antidepressants and these symptoms were appearing and I realized what it was. And I was there like, oh my God, that I feel like that doctor could have been right. And actually, it was really nice and surprising that a GP actually even brought that up in the first place, to be honest. But yeah, that's kind of how I discovered it. That was a really long-winded way of saying how I discovered it. And yeah, that was January 2023.
Wow. I mean, so many things. It's awesome that you were able to speak to your parents about it and that they could sort of confirm it for you. And because, I mean, you don't know what you were like in your teenage, well, at least I don't really. I was just a nightmare all the time, full stop. But like, you wouldn't know these things, right? So if there's a pattern, it's really cool that your parents were able to tell you that. And I'm so surprised at the GP. I mean, have you been back to a GP since about it and spoken to them about it? And has it
Yeah,
been similar or?
no. So I actually like whilst all this was happening, I was so like me and my family were so desperate to get this looked at. And I booked an appointment with a GP but couldn't get one for 3 or 4 weeks. And bearing in mind, like my parents came to stay with me because I wasn't safe to be alone. Like I was that depressed. Like I
Wow.
wasn't safe to be by myself. So my mum came and stayed with me for a little while. And like it was my dad was very hot on like do not leave her alone. And I ended up booking to see a private specialist, and I managed to get in within like a few days, luckily. But obviously, it was expensive, and the clinic is now unfortunately closed. It was a women's health clinic, and they've closed sadly. But then I saw her, and I spoke about everything, and it was a really very difficult appointment. And she basically kind of like confirmed it for me and was like, I want you to still go see your GP. I'm going to give you a prescription for a certain kind of antidepressants that we've seen work really well for PMDD. It's up to you if you want to take them. She's like, I'd suggest getting the prescription because I was very much so like, I want to go down the holistic route of healing.
Yeah.
But I was like, I will go to the GP and get these antidepressants anyway, talk to them, make sure it's on my like proper NHS documents that this is what's happened. And I went and I saw this male doctor, and I explained to him what was going on. I was also there about like a really severe pain I was getting my ovaries. And I went to go see him and I explained what had been going on. And I brought with him a printout of the letter that the GP that I saw at the private place was like, you
Yeah.
need to take this with you. And he literally just said, when I said that I'd been like suicidal and depressed, and he was like, do you really mean that, or are you just saying it? And I was just
What?
like, I know. Well, the thing is, you raise your eyebrows, and that's how I felt as well. But apparently, someone told me this, and also this may just be like someone gaslighting me. Someone did say to me, they were like, "Oh, technically, like doctors have to say that because, like, a lot of people do show up to doctors and say like they're suicidal when they're not." And I was just there, like,
What?
honestly, I remember when he said that, and I just literally instantly was like, "This is not a safe space to
No,
discuss
yeah.
what I'm going through." And instantly, and
Mm-mm.
I just literally, I looked at him and I was like, I was like, I literally have a letter from a private specialist. Why would I come here and say that I was suicidal when I wasn't? I was like, I was like, and I just acted like, I kind of acted dumb. I was like, I'm so confused. Like, are you being serious? And he was just there like, okay, so you actually were suicidal. And I was like, I was like, I wanted to die. Like, I wanted to kill myself. But I didn't want to be here. It's that bad. And he was like, that is really bad. Yeah. And then I spoke to him. I was like, so basically, the female specialist in this female issue has told me that the best treatment is going to be to take these antidepressants. And then he was like, I'm not sure. And he starts Googling it. So he starts Googling PMDD treatments. Yeah. He was like Googling it in front of my face and was just like, well, it does seem because basically I was prescribed these antidepressants to take for the luteal phase of my cycle. And that's it. And then because they're a really small dose of antidepressants,
Hmm.
they're not meant to really affect you too much in
Right.
terms of like any withdrawal or anything. It just kind of takes the edge off. And he was like, I don't really know about this. Like, I'm not really sure about this. It just doesn't seem right. What I'm going to do, I'm going to prescribe you sertraline because you've had sertraline before and you really got on with that. And I was there like, no, no, no. I don't want that. I want to
No.
have the one that this female specialist actually suggested for me.
Yeah.
And then he was just there like, and then he was like, well, okay, fine. We'll review you in a couple in like a month's time or something. And I was just like, okay. And then I was like, also, and I was like, I said really quickly, also, I was like, I know we're running out of time. I was like, I'm having a severe pain in my ovaries, which lasts like on and off, but also like around 10 days of the month, but a different sort of 10 days. There's a bit of an overlap. I was like, and he was like, we really have run out of time today. But he's like, what? He's like, I'll book you back in to speak about that issue for another day. But he's like, I just really think that you should think about going on birth control because I'm not on any. And he's
Of
like, I really do think
course.
that you should consider. And he had already tried to get me on the pill. He was like, when I first mentioned my like emotional hormonal issues, he was like, are your periods heavy? I was like, yes. And he was like, you should go on the pill. And then again, so he was like, I really do think that you should consider going on the pill because you feel really sad for part of the month, and you're getting like these period pains like for part of the month as well. And I just think that you'd benefit from going on birth control. So like have a little think about that. And I was like, these aren't period pains that I'm getting. I was like, I've said to you, it's around ovulation. It's not period pains. And I don't just feel a little bit sad. I feel depressed. And I was just there, like, at this point, I literally was like, I was so close to crying. And I was just there, like, I ain't fucking going back to seeing this guy. I almost complained.
Mm.
I kind of wish I did, but I felt incredibly dismissed. But since then, I have had another kind of good experience. I went and saw a female doctor about the problem in my ovaries and some other things I was kind of concerned about. And it was only when she referred me for a scan on my ovaries, and it was actually she was just randomly checking back up on my file to see how things were. And then they got the letter that had been sent from the private clinic, and she called me to be like, oh, Sophie, I really wanted to discuss with you the letter about your PMDD. How are you getting on with that? Like, is everything okay? You didn't mention this when you came in for your appointment, like because we were really quick on, just didn't really have any time. And she was like, I just wanted to talk to you about it. And I was just like, that was really nice that she checked up and
That's
like
so
of her own
nice.
sort of free will. So yeah,
Yeah.
like that was kind of how my experience with the GP went. So my advice for anyone who would go and would go like goes to see the GP, take someone with you, take a friend, a partner,
Hmm.
family member to help advocate for you and literally sit with you and be like, no, she's not lying. This is like,
Yeah.
I would say definitely take someone with you, like you,
Yeah.
because you may be like kind of made to feel a bit shitty about it.
Yeah, absolutely. God, that's like so gaslighting to say, you sure? Like, how condescending. It's terrible. Absolutely
I
awful. My
remember
mum
just
also
being
says, sorry.
shocked.
Yeah. It's really, yeah, it's a lot. My mum has said to me the other bit of advice she gives me for going to the doctor is try and read everything there is about everything first. Obviously, you did really well because you did all of your research and you knew. But like go in thinking that you know pretty much as the doctor does. And like this dude Googling things in front of you is, I mean, No, that's not okay in the
I was literally
slightest.
just like, I was like, what is PMDD? I was like, you're the one giving me a prescription here,
Yeah,
and like, I get it. I know the thing is, and I don't want to like slate like doctors because they're not specialists in everything, of course. Like, but at the same time, I was just like, and I had asked for like a specialist, like a female or someone who works, and they were just like, oh, we're really short staffed at the moment. This is the only person we can give you, and it was the
it's
quickest
really
appointment I could
difficult.
get. So I was like, so I would say
Mm,
also to anyone who does go to a GP, ask to see whoever specializes in like
hmm.
gynecological shit, and I can never say the word properly,
Yeah,
or like, you know, hormones and things like that, or just a
yeah.
woman. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you do come out with a bad experience as well, know that there's somebody else out there that will give you the experience that you need and will give you the
Yes,
prescriptions that you need and stuff like that. Like for every bad experience, there is a really good experience and there are great doctors out there. So
it's true,
yeah,
so
it
true.
frustrates me beyond belief that I mean, when I was Googling this earlier, right? It's like, yeah, this is what PMDD is. The treatments for it are antidepressants or hormonal birth control. And it's like,
Yeah,
really? Is that the
or
best we can
hormone,
do?
or HRT. And that's the next
Ah,
step,
that's
HRT.
interesting.
And that's, yeah. So I actually have a friend who has suffered from PMDD for years, and she was getting blood tests because she's trying to get pregnant. And she was having blood tests throughout the month. And basically, like, I think she was paying privately for these ones. And they were like, oh, your estrogen after ovulation, your estrogen, like, I think it was after ovulation, they were like, your estrogen drops so severely to like the level lower than menopausal women.
Oh,
They were like, you
wow.
basically essentially enter like a hormonal menopause because of like the level of like where your hormones are at, your estrogen is at. And they were like, this is what is very likely causing your PMDD,
Mm,
most likely. So they've given her an estrogen patch to wear for her luteal phase. And she said that, granted, it
wow.
was like her first cycle with it recently. And she was just like, this is the first month in years that I felt like a normal human being. And I felt like myself
Wow.
for the whole month, which is crazy. But like the thing is, obviously, PMDD, like most women's health things, it's so under research. People don't really know the full reasons, and there may be multiple reasons. So it's kind of almost like you've got to find out that reason for yourself. But like, how? How? She stumbled upon that by absolute accident. So it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, the moral of the story is if something's really hurting you, get it checked and get a second opinion, right? Because it could be
Yep.
something completely different. It could be what you think it is, and you never really know. So definitely go
Yeah.
get it checked. So when you got prescribed these antidepressants, did you take them or did you find another way to help with the symptoms?
No, so I quite honestly didn't want to go back on antidepressants. I was like, I'm gonna give myself 2 months, and I said this to the specialist. I was like, I'm gonna give myself 2 months to see if I can handle
Hmm.
this on a like a holistic sort of standpoint. And there's nothing I have against antidepressants. It's more like I was like, I would rather just do this as natural as I can and see how I go
Hmm.
with it. So I started taking a shit load of supplements and
Hmm.
also really sort of changing my lifestyle for my cycle as well. And I started getting acupuncture, which was like I won't lie,
Oh.
it cost me so much money. So acupuncture can really help with it. And oh, this is another thing that the male doctor said. He basically was like, oh, supplements are just sugar pills, they're just placebo pills. And I was just there like, yeah. So I was just there like,
Of course you'd say that.
okay, okay, cool. Great. Anyway, I'm going. And but yeah, so I take like so many supplements. So and I've really slipped with them recently, and I can tell when I don't take them. But I take ashwagandha, vitamin B12, D3, um, primrose oil,
Hmm.
Agnus castus, which is a really good one for hormonal issues, isoflavones, magnesium. But I feel like the if I had to pick like three to take every day that I feel like make the biggest difference, ashwagandha. But I do. Some people are like very apparently that can raise your testosterone. I don't know, someone
Hmm.
told me this, but like a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like it. But that's something that I have found helps so much. And I'm currently not taking it. And I can really tell. And I can tell the months that I get, like,
Hmm.
I can tell the months I don't take it. And as for acupuncture, I was having around 3 sessions a week, and it's expensive. It's like £100 for where I go, but
Mhm.
the woman is amazing. Once again, it's just one of these like frustrating things that I feel like you have to be in quite a privileged position to be able to treat it, which is just bullshit. And so I was having acupuncture 3 times a week, and
Mhm.
then that's like then dropped down to maybe like 3 times a month, twice a month, once a month at a very
Yeah.
specific point in my cycle. And after around like 2, 3 months of really being on it, and also having this like self-acceptance and forgiveness and understanding, and also tracking my cycle so religiously and understanding my body, I've kind of managed to like actually get to a point where it's manageable for me. And don't get me wrong, like I feel like I have a lot less stresses in my life now in a way, because it's like it sounds really bad. I feel bad for women who are married with kids who have this, because like I
Mm.
don't like I feel like I feel like it's actually weirdly something that's easier to manage by yourself, because you get to understand it, but other people don't. And like you don't
Yeah.
have other people stressing you out and causing these stresses on you.
Mhm.
So like I'm not in a relationship anymore, so I don't have that trigger of like being extra sensitive about something, and like my partner saying something, or us having an argument and me blowing up, maybe
Mhm.
because I'm premenstrual and I've got like I'm dealing with my hormones. Like I'm not going to blow up at them and make everything worse. I don't have that. And like it's a lot, my life's a lot easier to manage as well, because I don't really plan anything
Mhm.
difficult in the second half of my cycle. Like if I usually plan my biggest, most important meetings, my shoot days, like all towards the first half of my cycle. And I'm lucky, like running a couple of businesses, I can do that. I can't always,
Mhm.
but like I will say no to social events when my period's due, because I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what, like, oh, that's getting close to my period, and I don't think I'm gonna want to do that, because I
Yeah.
get so hypersensitive as well. Like I'm quite a sensitive person when it comes to like sensory stuff, like loud noises
Mhm.
and like bright lights and like big busy crowds, and it makes me very like overwhelmed. But oh my God, it's like so much worse when my periods do, like so much worse. So I'm just like,
Mhm.
I will avoid, and I'll be like, if my friend's got a birthday party, I'm like, I'm really sorry. Like if it's going to be in a situation that I can't deal with, I'll be like, I'm really sorry. I can't come to this, but I'm going to take you for lunch instead, because it's just about doing these self-protective measures
Yeah.
that allow myself. And even knowing, like, so I track my cycle religiously, and I have this thing, and I call it, it's just like the day 10 phenomenon for me. So I will wake up when I'm 10 days from my period starting, which is like actually when a lot of PMDD symptoms start. And I wake up and I'm like, feels weird today. I feel weird today. I feel really like insecure. I feel really anxious. And oh my God, like I just feel on edge, and I just don't really feel like myself. And I'll check my cycle and it will be like day 10. And I'm like, ah, makes sense. Every month
Mhm.
it's either it's like usually day 10 or day 9 or 11, sometimes day 9 or 11, but it's always on these days. And it's like, I feel the shift. It's not as severe as it used to be. But like, if it ever gets to a point where it gets really bad again and I can't manage it by myself, I will be at the doctor's. I will be speaking to a doctor, speaking to a GP, and I will be getting something else sorted, like whether it is back on antidepressants for the 2 weeks of the month, trying that out, or whether it's getting blood tests to figure out what goes on in my bloods. Is it something
Mm.
that could be helped with, like something like hormonal related? But I just feel like women's health, it's such like it's trial and error, and it's
Yes.
I think we're really unkind to ourselves as well, because we don't necessarily have the answers.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I think women's health is so complex, and it's such a minefield. And it's why I do quite like, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit hippy dippy here, but I quite like I like acupuncture and I like Eastern medicine, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff more tailored towards women's
Yeah.
health that actually like looks at fixing the root of issues, as opposed to like putting a bit of a band-aid over it. So it's why I've always really
Yeah.
liked acupuncture for that reason.
Absolutely. I think that the thing with, I mean, alternative medicine, I guess you could call it, acupuncture and all the supplements you're
Mm,
taking, is that they're not going to do anything bad for you. They might not exactly fix what you're trying to fix with them, but you're taking, vitamin
yeah.
B12 and whatever, like that's only going to do good things to you. And acupuncture is so good for like stress release
Mm.
and even just carving out half an hour of time for yourself to just
Oh,
lie down on a bed.
It is so good. And honestly, I
Yeah.
would go to these sessions really anxious and really like worked up. And like the only way I can describe it is almost like getting it was like, especially when I was really anxious, I didn't get as such full on results as this when I was in a better place. But on the days I showed up really anxious and upset and tense, I felt like I had been temporarily lobotomized. Like I was lying on that bed, and then she'd be like, you know, tap here, tap here, tap here. And then it was usually the points in my stomach, my
Mm.
abdomen, where she would put the pins. And on it, it would just be suddenly like I read, and I was just there like,
Wow.
I can't move because I am so so relaxed.
Hmm.
I felt like I was like stoned or something. I was like, oh my God. And then you leave the session feeling super zen, and like that anxiety kind of melts away. And it's such an incredible practice. You know, the woman that I went to was amazing. She was on Harley Street and she's so kind. She was like, I like called her like a therapist with needles because she was like a therapist and would
Mm.
talk to me about all the emotional stuff and hold my hand whilst I cried and was really like there for me and like a kind of like a motherly figure. And then she'd be like, right on the bed, pin, pin, pin. And yeah, she's amazing, amazing woman.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, Sam goes for acupuncture. We found this little place in Camden that's cheaper. I think it's like 50 quid a session or something. So, I mean, yeah, there's
This is
still
the thing.
barriers, but there are
You,
places you can
but
go that are a bit cheaper, I guess.
exactly. If you look, if you're in London or out of London, just look around your local area
Mm.
and you may need to try a few different places, look for reviews because I know where I went is expensive, but like I've committed to her. She's like my woman now. Whereas like I do
Hmm.
have friends who go and see someone who's like, oh yeah, I just go to the local like place around the
Yeah,
corner and it's like £45, £50 and it is
yeah,
really cheap, but it does the job. So it's definitely really worth exploring. So
yeah,
100%.
for sure. I really liked what you said about acceptance and that helping sort of mentally. It's like when you've got the diagnosis or you've managed to speak to enough people about it and you kind of understand that this is something that you're living with and allowing yourself to try and sort of cope with it in the best way that you can instead of being like, no, this isn't me. I'm no, no, I need antidepressants. I'm depressed. It must be something else. Like, no, we this is what happens to us. We are, we get all these things and it is okay and it's normal. And, there's a big percentage of 1.6% of women that have this. So that acceptance is really important, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's also like understanding, like I guess it's like better the devil you know in a way. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
know what this is. So I know like whereas before I I actually was like getting like what I can only describe as almost being borderline hallucinations, where I was in such a dark space in my mind and I'd be working from home and
Wow.
I'd be like, I just cannot do this. And I would feel so suffocated in my apartment. It felt like I felt like the walls were closing in on me,
Mm.
that I literally had to just go out to the park and sit in the park in the fucking freezing cold
Oh my
and cry on
God.
a bench because I was like, I cannot be in this apartment because it's scaring me. Like, I feel like I can't breathe in here. The walls are closing in on me. And it was that bleak and that dark.
Wow.
And I was just like, I don't know what to do. And no one's here. I was like, I'm alone. I can't call my boyfriend. He's at work. Like, I would call my mum and my mum would be like, what's at the time she was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I just don't know. I was like, I don't know why I feel like this. Whereas now, I track my cycle and I'm like, I feel a certain way, but I know that it is this. And I think having suffered from depression before, or what may have been, because PMDD it can affect you for your whole cycle. It can affect you so badly that you're like pretty much pretty depressed for this whole cycle, but then really, really, really bad when your period is due. And that's the thing. Like,
Mm.
so I think that is probably what I was suffering with before I went on antidepressants. And like I was just every time it would happen to me, I'd be like, I am going insane. I am actually going insane. And I think like the reality was like my partner, even though after I got diagnosed with PMDD, he did really like step up and really want to be there for me. And he did do some like really good things, like speaking to other people about it, to sort of understand it better. But in the lead up to it, he kind of was just he wasn't particularly very supportive of my emotions because he didn't really understand it. So like having someone who has like a high level of emotional intelligence and can handle your emotions as well is so
Mm.
important, and not everyone has that, and it's very difficult. And like I just honestly felt like I was going crazy every month, whereas now I'm there like cool, I'm having a really bad day, and that is all it is, and it is my hormones, and I can
Mm,
accept it, and I am going to cancel the rest of the day. I am
yeah,
not going to go to the gym, but I'm going to go and lie in the
yeah,
spa. I'm going to lie and I'm going to turn off my phone. I'm going to watch like shit TV. I'm going to have a CBD drink, and I'm
yeah,
just going to calm the fuck down. Like I'm just shutting everyone off. It's these self-protective things and self-acceptance, and knowing that it will get better because it does get better every single month. So when you know that this is what you're working with, you almost
hmm,
can work with it better. Whereas when you don't know what it is, you're like, I have gone
yeah,
insane. And this is so scary and terrifying. So yeah, it's just knowledge. Knowledge is
yeah.
power.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say exactly the same thing. Knowledge is literally everything. And also knowledge is very specific to you and your body. And so tracking
Yes.
for, so people sometimes kind of assume, okay, I'm going to track for a few months and then I'm going to know everything. It's like, no, you do it for years and you slowly start to understand your body more and more. And I love what you said about every 10 days before your period, that morning you wake up and it's crazy. Our bodies are crazy, aren't they?
Honestly,
It's
it's
yeah.
it's mad every single month. And then also to a point that like when it happens, it then makes me it kind of like makes me laugh because I'm like, ha ha ha. Because I'm like, and then I'm like, you know what, I could have really used the laugh today because I feel like shit. So I like have a
Yeah.
little giggle, like, haha, I know my body, my silly little
Yeah.
body is doing this thing again. Like, and it's just ways that you kind of learn to cope with it. And I'm grateful that I've managed to cope with it in the way that I can because I know not everyone
Hmm.
gets on with the same things I do. And like I said, like a lot of people have more responsibilities. They've got families that they're dealing with during times like this. And I'm just like, I don't know how you do it. Like insane.
Yeah. Kudos to them. But also
Mm.
kudos to you for, turning this shit situation into something that you can manage, control, and giggle about sometimes. Fucking great.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't ever think I would be here, but I am. And also give you kind of gives me I used to feel a lot of shame for the outbursts I would have when my period was due because as much as I love my mom, I kind of grew up with her being like, I just don't understand when I'm due my period and I'm hormonal. I just control my emotions. Just learn to control your emotions. And I just remember being there as a teenager, like probably 16, like how the fuck do you control these hormonal emotions? Like how do you do that? Like I don't know how the fuck you do that. Like my
Hmm.
hormones and my emotions, they do control me during that time, and it takes me a lot, which is why I don't really leave the house. When I'm during my period now, I might try and avoid as many people as possible, but I just don't think it's as simple as that. But I think it's just I think like more people are talking about PMDD, the more people are
Hmm.
realizing it's what they've got. And I've spoke to so many women who've reached out to me and be like, thank you so much for everything you posted. You've really made me feel not alone because it is insanely isolating. It's like
Yeah.
an invisible illness. It's like an invisible, like mental, or I guess all most mental
Yeah.
illnesses are invisible because they're in your head. But it's also like
Yeah.
one that I think as well, something that really kind of annoys me, and I kind of get it. It's like we all joke about PMS that, oh my God, she's like, I've got PMS and I'm really bitchy and moody. And like you see jokes about it on TV all the time. And I feel as much as I feel like joking about something can help normalize it to a degree, I then think it trivializes it to a
Hmm.
point where like actually women's hormones aren't taken seriously. And it's just they're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, oh, you're just a little bit PMSy. And it's like, no, this is so much more than that. And I always say
Yeah.
like PMDD is essentially to PMS what a migraine is to a headache. It's like they are of the
Yeah.
same genre, but of an entirely different ilk and a different breed and different like intensity. It's like PMS on steroids, basically. So it's just so much more difficult.
I can't even imagine, honestly. Like sometimes my PMS is so bad that I feel like shit and I don't want to leave the house and whatever. But if it was any worse than that, oh my God, I really feel for you.
Yeah.
Is there any other, I know we've given some advice along the way, but is there any other advice you would give to anybody who thinks they may have PMDD?
I would say if you think you have it, the truth is you probably do because
Hmm.
it is different. It is different. And I want people to feel validated in their experiences. I would say, in regards to getting a formal diagnosis, you need to have a 3-month mood diary, which I had a 2-month mood diary when I went for my private appointment, but then had a 3-month one when I went for my GP appointment because I'd been keeping up with it. So just whether it's like tracking it in your phone, just like write down a note of like how you feel throughout the month. And this can just help get a diagnosis, and it's also concrete proof going to a GP and being like, and this is in line with my cycle, and like just write down what day of your cycle, the date that it is and what day that like your cycle is,
Mm.
and then like write down like just how you feel every day, and then you can track it for yourself, whether you do it on your phone or like a piece of paper and a notebook, whatever. I think it's really important to do that, and then you can really see for yourself like the fluctuations. And like I think if you do go see a GP and they're shitty about it, go see another one. Don't be put off. Definitely go see another one, because like it can get better, and it does get better. Um, I would actually, and maybe this is quite bad of me to say, I think one of the worst things that I did was go on the community support groups and forums on Reddit and Facebook, because all it was people talking about how depressed they were, how much they hated their lives, how much they wanted to die. And it was so many people talking about that. And bearing in mind, you're reading that when you also feel that way, it doesn't help. And also, there was a lot of people who were then sharing their experiences of things that they tried. And it almost seemed a little bit like a competition of, well, I tried that and it didn't work for me. So maybe you never had PMDD in the first place. And it's like
Oh God.
very, like, it was just a very, for me, it felt like a very nasty, toxic environment. And it seemed also insanely fucking hopeless. It felt like everyone who went on there was obviously, and it's awful, everyone who was on there was in really dark places. It was very
Yeah.
fucking hopeless. And I honestly went on there and I was there like, it made me feel so much worse. So I honestly would say, do not go on the forums on Reddit, and do not go on the forums on Facebook, because I don't particularly think they're helpful. I don't. I would like look
Yeah.
into, see if you can find other like people like influencers and stuff like that, like who have it and have spoke about it. And that's not me just out here promoting myself. I just think it's better to see someone who suffers from it, who actually does live a, you see them living a life that can be up and down and up and down and up and
Mm.
down, but like it's more accurate than that, and it gives you a little bit more hope and stuff like that than
Yeah.
just people who just shouting into the void online. So there'd be
Yeah.
moments of advice for now.
I love that. And I hope that by listening to this podcast, that also gives a bit of hope, because it's been actually really positive for quite a lot of it
Yeah.
in the ways in which you can deal with it. And it's nice knowing that other people suffer from it too and can live and are happy. And final question for you. Is there anything you would tell your younger self about periods?
Oh, what would I tell my younger self about periods? I would probably pre-warn her and just be like, babe, by the way, PMS isn't just the first 4 or 5 days before your period. It can last a little bit longer. So if you're feeling cranky in the middle of the month, or if you're feeling hungry in the middle of the month, like I would say to her, like, track your cycle from an earlier date, because your hormones impact your mood so much. So yeah, I would say track your cycle from a far earlier date. I mean, I've been doing it for years now, like probably like six years now. Um,
Mhm.
but I wish I'd started when I was younger, because it's also
Yeah.
really interesting, and it's so important, and it's so liberating understanding your body and understanding like why you are the way that you are. Like, men have this like 24-hour hormone system. We have a 28-day one. So it's like
Hmm.
it's entirely different, and we live in essentially a man's world made for men, like, which is like these like expectations of what is on like men, as if we're refreshing every day, but we're not. Like, women refresh every month, and we're all at different parts of this month. So
Yeah.
I think knowing that would allow me to have been a lot more forgiving over myself and my body, and I think forgiveness and self-acceptance, really. So I would definitely go back and be like, babes, track your cycle. Like, write it down on a piece
Yes.
of paper. You don't have you may be 14, you don't have an iPhone, they're not invented. Just write down clear diary instead. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was so beautifully put. I couldn't agree more. We're taught that periods are such a negative thing, and like you said, everyone jokes about them, but it's kind of not really a joke. It's a condescending shut the fuck up joke, right? So we get
Yeah.
that all the way through our teenage years, and then we struggle with why we don't wake up every single morning feeling exactly the same way, or can't concentrate at work for like a week out of the month, or whatever it is that, or just aren't feeling horny sometimes, or feel really horny other times.
Hmm.
And it's just so confusing. So to
Yep.
know what's happening and know that these changes are actually normal and can be incredibly empowering as well, to really understand, like, when you're feeling superhuman and what to do with that time of the month, or when you're not feeling so good, and to allow yourself to rest and recover, and just like you said, acceptance and forgiveness is so
Yeah.
important. So yeah.
Yeah, like honestly, absolutely. Like for example, I got a thing pop up today being like, you're ovulating today. And I'm like, you know what? I've been invited to this last minute, really cool, like BAFTA party. I'm like gonna go to this party and
Yeah.
I'm gonna look really good because apparently we look prettier when we're ovulating. Apparently, according to some weird studies that some men did, said they find women more attractive when they're ovulating. So I was like, I look my prettiest, I have more energy, I am making the most of it, and I'm doing this last minute party invite because I have the energy for it
Yes.
right now. Because next week, I'm not going to be able to say yes to a last minute party invite. It's going to be a hell no. So yeah, I'm like, it's you learn, and you just, it's honestly the best thing that you can ever do for yourself, like learning about your body and your cycle, and it's the best.
Oh, I love that so much. Have the best time at this
Yay.
event. Can you tell us where we can find you, your socials and website and stuff?
Yes, you find me my personal Instagram at it's Sophie Milner. And also if you want to make cool friends in London, just follow us on Instagram for New Circle Society at New Circle Society, and then you sign up to join and come to our events because everyone's really nice. And there's a couple girls out there who have PMDD as well, so it's been nice being to other girls who go through it as well. So yeah, it's great. Everyone's a good vibe.
Love that. Yay.
Yeah,
And you can find Understand Your Cycle at www.understandyourcycle.com, and come and join our community as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Sophie. It was awesome speaking to you. And yeah,
no
see you
worries.
soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Bye.
Amazing. Bye.